feel like one of those men who poses with fish they catch. Hello, I'm Jacinta from Past That Plant. Today we are repotting one of my favourite houseplants and I'm a little bit nervous about it. Today I'm going to be repotting the Begonia Maculata. I haven't repotted her before and I'm not sure how it's going to go. I'm not usually nervous to repot a houseplant, but this one I stupidly potted directly into this ceramic planter. There's no nursery pot, which means that she may be a little bit tricky to get out. I don't want to break the plant, I don't want to break the pot, so let's see how we go. So believe it or not, this begonia is made entirely out of cuttings, which I rooted in water, and then I planted them all together last April. It is now October, and this is how much it's grown. I will put some clips in from when I first planted them. Now the scary bit, let's see if we can get this plant out. So I am going to leave all the stakes in and all the separate sections tied to the stakes just to try and contain it a little bit. And I'm just going to go in with a small trowel to try and loosen it. I was tossing up whether to do this wet or dry. We're going to start with dry, and if that isn't working, I will soak the soil, and if that doesn't work, I may have to break the pot, which I don't want to do. So let's see. She's coming. Hooray. Well, it wasn't too bad. So we got her out. We did lose a few little leaves from the base, but honestly, that's fine. So you can see there is the mesh round, which I always put in the bottom of my plants. I thought there was a few in there, but you can see it just pulled off the roots easily. Begonias have a very thin root systems. So I am going to add some fresh rounds to the base of my new nursery pot or grower's pot. So you can see it's quite big, so I'll just put a few in the base, so the potting mix doesn't fall straight out the bottom, and so when I bottom water, it also doesn't just flush through. So I'm using a general indoor potting mix, which I find works well for begonias. I'm going to add 2/3 of the way with potting medium, leaving a well in the center. I'm going to add in my begonia and then fill the soil around. Now the slightly tricky part of putting it in there and trying to hold it all up. I might put the stakes back in just so I don't have to keep holding this one. Getting very hot. I'm probably getting flushed. You can probably see me going red. It's alright. Real life, remember? See, this one's also missing its cane. So just flexible bamboo stakes, get them anywhere. Okay, she's setting up a little better now. Obviously the soil hasn't been packed that much, so let's keep adding to it. Now I've got my hands free. tying a few more bits up so they're out of the way. Now I'm just going to fill all the way around with potting mix. Who else hates the heat? It's spring here, but it's going to be 30 degrees tomorrow, Celsius obviously, Australia. You don't have to stake your cane begonias. They do stand up on their own, but they may splay out as they grow. And also, I'll insert a clip from a previous video, but I have this plant sitting right in my window, which I frequently open, and it gets very, very windy and blustery here, so she would absolutely be getting whiplash. Okay, I fussed around with it a bit more, and I'm pretty happy with how it's looking. Obviously there's more bits I could pin back, but I'm not going to right now. So I'm going to pop it into its planter and then give it a good water and a mist, because I love to mist my begonias. There's only a little bit of water running through it, so I might add some more so it's really hydrated after its ordeal. I also need some hydration. So this is what she's looking like now. Still stunning. I'm not sure if I love this pot plant combo, but because it's in a nursery pot now, I can easily swap out the planter without all that extra stress. I do have a few dedicated care videos on the Begonia Maculata, but in short, I give her a water weekly and I top and bottom water this one. I fertilize monthly with an NPK mix. I mist it especially in summer, which helps get those crispy tips. It sits in a very sunny window. It gets the morning sunlight. It is a north facing window and I'm in Australia, so the bright morning sunlight, not afternoon. I think that would scorch the leaves. And that gives you the gorgeous vibrant red. You can see the ones that lower down are more pale and they're the ones that don't get as much sunlight. So where these get a lot and they're stunning. Yeah, bright light, high water, high humidity. It's very easy to propagate. You can propagate in a potting mix or in water. I do have lots of previous clips which I will add in so you can see how easy it is to propagate them. Again, this whole gorgeous plant is from propagations, so don't worry if yours is looking a little sad or if you lose some leaves in a repot or just life, because it's easy to propagate and can grow into this. Okay, I need to let some air in because I'm so rosy. Let me know if the parrots were annoying and any other comments or feedback that you have. Bye. Today we are going to be repotting my Begonia Rock, which is this gorgeous little begonia I've got. It is still in the original potting mix it came home in. I'm going to repot it into this good quality indoor potting mix. The indoor potting mix is the same one that my beautiful Begonia Maculata is planted in. Let's hope my Begonia Rock grows just as well as my Maculata has. And yes, she's heavy. That's why we do Pilates. I'm just going to use a potting mat, which helps me to contain the mess I make. gloves on. I don't know what happened, but those last clips were in 4 times slowed down and no sound, so great. This is what she's looking like out of the pot, which you would have missed. I did take some on my phone, but it's portrait, so love that for me and you. But I'm just going to put some gloves on and shake off this potting medium, whatever it is. Always something. Not too bad. Some healthy long roots. Hopefully you can hear me. And I'm not in slow-mo because no one wants it. I did have gloves on, but I'm just taking them off so I can look a little bit closer and make sure she doesn't have a death plug, which I can't really tell with the gloves on. I don't think so. No, I think she's okay. Some really cute little baby leaves in there. But I am just going to go back in the same pot because we are repotting. We're not going up a size. I'm just changing the potting medium. As always, I am adding a mesh round to the bottom of my nursery pot before I put in my potting medium. This just stops the potting medium falling straight through and out the bottom, which is really great as I tend to bottom water, and this is how you stop soil just running straight out the bottom of your pot. So just looking at the size and how much I'm going to fill it, I will half fill this with my new potting medium, pop this in, and then fill around the outside. You'll notice obviously there's still potting medium on this one. I'm not going to worry about trying to get every single spot off because there's no pests, there's not anything wrong with this potting medium, it's just not what I like to use. So there's no need to try and get every single speck of that soil off it. Which is half full. Now I'm going to make a little well in the middle and pop in my plant. Okay, that's looking good. Now I'm just going to fill around the outside and I'm going to be careful not to cover these tiny little leaves down here or they won't make it. Whenever I repot a plant, I like to pop it in a bowl and fully saturate the soil, and I water it until the water runs out the bottom, and then I let it sit for a while just so she is super hydrated, and it also helps to settle the potting medium. So let's do that. see it's running out the bottom, so I'm just going to let it sit for a while I tidy up. So all this excess potting mix I'm just going to pop in a bowl, and then I usually just throw it on my outdoor garden or plants because, as I said before, there's nothing wrong with this potting mix, it just wasn't right for my begonia. So we will repurpose it. She's finished hydrating. I'm just going to pop it back in the same pot. Super cute. So it looks the same but has had a whole refresh, and I'm hoping she will grow big and beautiful like my other begonia. And that's how you repot a Begonia Rock. So pretty. And of course, the inspo. Happy planting. Hello, I'm Jacinta from Past That Plant, and today we are going to be repotting one of my favorite houseplants, the Pilea. This plant also goes by the name of the Chinese money plant, the pancake plant, or the coin plant. It is also called the friendship plant because it is so easy to propagate that if you have one, you can easily propagate many more, enough to give to all of your friends. So I grew this Pilea from a pup, just like this one, which I cut off the mother plant and rooted in water. She's grown so beautifully. There is one main stem. These are a few pups that I've left on, and there's lots of tiny babies growing as well. The Pilea is sometimes confused with pennywort. I often have people messaging me saying, oh, this is growing all over my backyard, it's a weed, and that is a different plant. I have also seen on Facebook Marketplace people trying to sell peperomia raindrops as Pileas, which are also a gorgeous plant. I would have one as well, but it's just wrong. So I'm going to use a potting mat because I make a mess. Now most of my houseplants are in nursery pots, also called growers pots, inside my decorative planter. I prefer to use growers pots because they are malleable, which makes the repotting process really easy because you can squeeze out the plant. You can also change the decorative planter easily. They have lots of drainage holes in them, so you don't have to worry about buying a decorative planter with drainage holes. I'm going to squeeze her out. You can see it was definitely time for a repot. There are so many healthy looking roots all the way around, coming out the base as well. So you can really see I've got the one mother plant, and then there's some larger pups that I've left on, and then lots of smaller ones as well. For the growers pot, I'm going to go up 2 inches in size. This was the one that it was in, and now we're going up to this one. The reason why you don't want to use a massive pot is because you don't want too much potting mix around the root ball because it takes a long time to dry out, and that is how you can get issues such as root rot. So just 2 inches bigger. You can also see that the holes in this one are quite big. So I'm going to go in with some little mesh rounds, which I just put in the base. And this stops the potting mix from just falling straight through. I'm just going to put a few in the bottom because this is quite big. Perfect. Now this might seem strange, but I like to use a cacti and succulent potting mix for my Pileas. I just find that this one has a really good drainage. It doesn't retain moisture like some other potting mixes do because it doesn't have any peat moss or anything like that in it. So because there is the little mesh rounds in there, when I put in the potting mix, it shouldn't just fall straight through. Now, some people will tell you need to remove all the existing potting mix when you repot. I'm not one of those people. I only change all of the potting mix and completely separate the roots if there is something wrong with the plant or the potting mix. So if it's got root rot or it's in the wrong potting mix, or if you've got a pest that is in the roots, then you want to change it, but otherwise there is really no need to mess with this. So I've filled this pot a third with potting mix. I'm just going to pop my plant in and fill around the edges. Before I fill around the edges, I'm just going to show you again what the pups look like. You can see there's a whole bunch. Leaving the pups on is how you will have a really full Pilea. Now that my potting mix is in, I'm just going to re-add my very fancy trellis, which is a chopstick. I just find this works really well to help this plant sit up straight because they do lean quite a bit when they're this heavy. You can of course use a real plant trellis or a plant pole, or I wouldn't use a moss pole, but a trellis is a great option. Now she just stands up a bit taller and doesn't crush the little babies underneath. Okay, so now we are going to give her a good water, and I like to water my Pilea from the base. I'm just going to use the big bottom watering bowl. So I'm just going to fill up my bowl with some water. This is rainwater that I collect, or if you live somewhere with suitable tap water, you can use that, or you can buy distilled water. And then I'm just going to add some liquid plant food. It's an NPK mix. And pop her into soak. Obviously there's a lot of potting mix which has just gone in dry, so this will absorb quite a bit of water. While she's doing that, I'll just do a quick tidy up. This has been sitting in water for over 10 minutes now, so that's plenty. Did absorb quite a lot of water. I'm just going to let her drip a bit before popping it in the new planter, just so she's not sitting in a bunch of water. Okay, cute. Loving how this little combo looks together. Yeah, love it. So she's just had a good drink, so I won't water her again for a week or so. In summer and spring I tend to water this one weekly, and in the cooler months I go every 10 to 14 days. I've also just fertilized her, so I won't do that again for a month. And I skip fertilizer altogether in winter and autumn when the plant is dormant. You really don't want to overfeed your houseplants. I know it can be tempting because you may hope that that'll make it grow bigger faster, but if you feed it too often you can damage the plant and get what is called fertilizer burn, which will leave you with ugly foliage, so we don't want to do that. Now I'm going to pop her back in the same spot that she was before. This will just help prevent a bit of transplant shock. She sits in a south-facing window, and I'm in Australia, so she gets the indirect sunlight but is in a very bright spot right up against a window. So these Pilea are indoor plants, which is why they look so perfect, with perfect round dark green foliage. But I do also have a few outside, which are just plants which I had semi-abandoned, which have grown into absolute monsters. So this little beast is one that I have outside on my balcony. You can see she looks a little bit rough. Snails have been chomping on it. The leaves have some discoloration from getting wet. There is some kind of spider sac on that one. I'm Australian, I don't care about spiders. But she's blooming. So these blooms were older and have mainly fallen off, but these are new ones, little buds which will flower. So it's a really good example of what your Pilea can look like if you just let it grow wild and don't cut any of the pops off. So I've got the wild outdoor version and the Instagram ready indoor version. Let me know which one you prefer. Some common issues: if your plant is starting to go a bit yellow, which you can see this outdoor monster one has, like this leaf, it is usually a sign of a watering issue or a lack of nutrients. Now obviously I've just got this one outdoors, so I can't remember the last time I fertilized it. Let's do that actually. Let's give her a little love. So I rarely fertilize her, which is probably why she's going yellow. If you want gorgeous deep green foliage, you really need to make sure they're getting nutrients such as magnesium. If your foliage is starting to cup, that could be a watering or humidity issue, whether it's curling in or out. Same if you've got cracked leaves. Obviously this doesn't necessarily apply if you've got an outdoor plant which is just getting blasted by the wind or possibly eaten by something. But if your indoor one is cupping, then you likely need to change the humidity or your watering schedule. If your leaves are falling off, I believe you may have been getting it too wet. I try not to wet my stems or my foliage too much. Again, this one obviously gets wet, but she's just doing her own thing. But if you want an indoor pretty one, try not to wet the leaves or foliage too much. If your leaves are falling off, this could be why. So check for that. I've got mine in a bright spot where it gets indirect sunlight, and I think that's it. It is time to pot up these two Philodendron White Princess cuttings. Let's pot up my two white Philodendron Princess cuttings. These are from the same plant. You can see it is well and truly ready to pot up. This was the very top cutting. And this was the middle section. This top cutting, the new foliage has continued to grow up and out of the top. You can see a new baby leaf here, and these two are also new. Whereas this middle section has grown a new shoot. There's a new shoot here. When I bought this plant, it did say it was a Philodendron White Prince on it, but you can see that there is pink on the stem, which means it is a princess. You can see the roots on both are quite long. I like to leave them until they're a few inches long with first and secondary roots. I find this really helps with the transfer process from hydro to a potting medium. I'm going to put these into an aeroid soil. Philodendrons are aeroids after all, so let's do that. Now this bit is optional, but I am just going to stick them under the shower for a few seconds because they are a bit dusty from sitting on my shelf, and this is just a really easy way to clean the leaves before I put it into a potting medium. Much better. Now the foliage on my two cuttings are nice and clean, so let's get it into an aeroid mix. Alright, this is everything that we need. I have my grower's pot, my two cuttings which have rooted. I have my mesh round. I always put these in the bottom of my grower's pots. Just like that, and it stops any of the soil or potting medium falling straight out the bottom. This is quite big holes in this one. my little trowel, some gloves, because I'm going to be handling some fertilizer, and I have my aeroid mix. I'm just going to put my gloves on, which is a good idea whenever you are handling any potting medium or especially any plant food. This is a nice and chunky aeroid mix. Should be enough. And I'm going to add in some of this soil and micro booster. Be enough. Just out of the way. So I already have my mesh in the bottom. I'm now going to fill my nursery pot up 3/4 of the way and then stick in my plant cuttings. So I have my soil almost to the top. Now I'm going to put my 2 cuttings in. Yes, they will look good together. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a well in the center. I'm going to put these 2 in the center and then put the rest of my aeroid mix around the sides. Okay, the moment of truth is to see if it stands up on its own, and then we'll know if I've planted it deep enough or not. Okay, perfect. It's looking so good already. So one of my biggest tips for a successful transfer from hydro to soil is to make sure that the potting medium is completely saturated, and I mean wet. You don't want any dry spots because the roots have been growing in water, so they could go into shock if you put them into a dry potting medium and don't water it straight away. So I'm going to water it through and then let it sit in this bowl of water for about an hour. Don't need the gloves anymore. Doing this will also settle the potting medium, so you can see if you need to add any more or stake your plant as well. But she seems pretty good. So the plant is still absorbing the water. Once it's finished, I will let it drain off a little, and then I'm going to pop it in this cute ceramic planter. And I think it'll look great. Okay, that should do it. Of course, Marvin's coming over. He's had a haircut. Thank you. Good boy. Okay. Oops. Definitely saturated now. Set the excess drip and pop her in. Perfect. So there you have it, transferring 2 Philodendron White Princess rooted cuttings from hydro to an aeroid potting mix. Because I planted the 2 together, this should be a beautiful full plant in no time. And by no time, I mean 3 to 6 months. And now I'm going to pop it right here on my plant stand. Hello, I'm Jacinta from Past That Plant. 10 months ago I chopped and propped my Philodendron Pink Princess Today we are going to have a look at the growth and branches which has come from that cut, and also put up the propagation. This is what the mother plant is looking like now. She's way too big for the camera to see all in one shot, but let's see what we can do. This is the side which I took the cutting from. You can see there are so many new growth points, including branching, which I was really happy to see, as well as continuing to grow up. There's all these new branches all the way down, and the same has happened to the side which I didn't cut. This growth point here is a new branch, so you can see that it's coming off, and that there is new foliage growing there, as well as continuing to grow out the top. And these new growth points are also forming all the way up the stem. So some of the leaves are spaced out, but I can see that there is going to be new branches all the way down, so she's really going to fill out, which I'm excited to see. As well as taking the propagation, I do also prune this plant, which helps with growth and bushiness. Move this out of the way. This is the cutting that we're going to pot up today. You can see the roots are really long. This one I could have potted up months ago, but as I said, I've just been through autumn and winter, and spring or summer is the best time to repot. I also really love water propagation, so I was more than happy to let this one continue to root. There is new foliage growing as well, but the leaves are quite small. Putting it in a potting mix will help the new foliage grow bigger and more beautiful. Before I put up this propagation, I am going to give the mother plant a shower. It is summer here in Australia, and it's been high 30s all week and is going to be 40 today, which is just ridiculous if you hate the hot weather like I do. But my plants are also suffering a little bit from the heat and also the constant aircon. It's drying them out, so popping her in the shower will be a good chance to wash the leaves, increase the humidity, and soak the soil. Where I live, tap water is totally fine to use for houseplants. I'm lucky, I know. So let's give her a shower. I'm going to pop my philodendron on a stool in the shower so I can reach all the areas with my shower head. Currently my giant Monstera Thai constellation is sitting on, so I'm going to have to move that. Then I will also show you my hack to stop soil or potting mix are running down the drain as well, because that can happen and we don't want to clog those drains. With my gorgeous Begonia out of the way as well. The thing that no one tells you about having a green thumb is that all your plants grow really big, really fast, and you have no room for them. Woe is me, I know. Whenever I shower my houseplants, I like to pop them on a bowl first. This just catches any of the excess potting mix that may flush through the soil. Soaking the soil is not the goal here, but it will definitely get wet whilst I shower it. So popping it in a bowl really helps to stop that runoff. a little. Make a well in the middle now, half full. I'm gonna add a little well in the middle. Pop in my philodendron. I need to do that much higher so I don't cover up these. Obviously want the roots down. Now I will fill around. I'm going to add a chopstick as my support of choice. I do have pretty trellis and everything else, but I just think the chopstick works really well, so why not use it? I'm going to fill around. Make sure the roots are covered, but that my little branches growing are not. There we go. Give it a shake. That's it. Now we'll just give her a good soak and pop her in a pot. Water until it comes at the bottom. Now I will let it soak for a little bit before popping her in the pot. You're going to make sure the soil is very saturated, as this was a water propagation, so the roots will not like being dry or touching a dry potting mix. Okay, now I will let her soak. So this plant has been soaking for about half an hour now, which is well and truly enough time for it to be fully hydrated and the soil saturated. So I'm now going to pop it in this little blue planter. Very cute. Quite snug, but there is enough room still for airflow to get in. Air to the roots is very important. Now that this Philodendron Pink Princess is potted up and it has a little semi-support with the chopstick, the foliage should start to grow a lot bigger. I'm going to pop it in a very sunny spot where it'll get direct and indirect sunlight, and next time I water it I'm going to add a NPK fertilizer as well. I think she looks really cute. The mother plant will now also be dry, so let's pop her back in her planter as well. The stool dried very quickly, so I can put my Monstera Tack Constellation back. As it should be. Looking much better after having a nice warm rinse. So I do use slightly warm water. You don't want to shock your plant by using water which is too cold, or that is too hot. We don't want to steam our houseplant. I do have this one staked now, of course, as you can see, on a branch. Staking a plant helps to support it and will also help you to have bigger foliage, which is the goal. It is branching so well since I chopped and propped it. As well as propagating this plant, I also prune it, which means you can cut off the leaves that are dying off or any ugly stems or anything like that. And it'll also help with new growth. It is midsummer here in Australia, so I am excited to see how it grows over the next few months, and I will of course keep you updated. Hello, I'm Jacinta from Past That Plant, and today we are going to put up one of my Fiddle Leaf Fig propagations. So it is currently December and I took this cutting in January. So you can really see how much the roots have grown over the past year. It is well and truly ready to put up, so we'll do that shortly. This is the section where I took the cutting from. You can see it looks much better than the rest of this leggy plant, where the foliage is missing at the base. Compared to these two stems, which are single leader stems, which just means they're growing up off one main stem and the leaves are just coming off to the side, which is why it's looking quite leggy. So now let's put up the existing propagation, which is well and truly rooted, and it keeps growing algae because I have it in clear glass, compared to this cutting is much older. You can see the roots don't have any algae growth, and that is because it is in amber glass instead of clear glass, which keeps the water cooler and stops algae from growing. I definitely need to get some more amber propagation vessels, but alas, let's put up this one. I don't technically make my own potting mix, but I am going to combine two. An indoor potting mix and an aeroid mix. I find this makes the perfect potting mix for a ficus, which the fiddle leaf is. And if you're thinking it looks a little bit small, it's because it's the Bambino variety. This is the pot I'm going to put it in. It's not massive. I think a scoop of each will be plenty. A bit more of the aeroid. Trying not to get as hot as the Begonia Repot, but it is 35 today Celsius, so I can't open the windows. And there is an air conditioning vent right above this table, which freezes me. And then it's also really noisy, so I'm just sweating it out, so I hope you appreciate it. But ignore me if I go red, we'll just say it's festive red. Anyway, we're just mixing this up. So it looks like this. So now, as always, I'm putting a little mesh round in the base of my pot, and that is to just stop all the potting mix falling straight through. So just half fill it with your potting mix. Bit of a well, and then fill around the outside. I just don't have the patience for the scoop by scoop. I will need to make some more as well to fill it up a bit higher. So it's standing up on its own. which is great. And this is the perfect size pot for it. So I'm just going to put it in a bowl of water. I'm going to top water it and let it soak from the bottom. This is one of my biggest tips for transferring a cutting from a hydro situation to a potting mix. These roots grew in water, so if you put them in a dry environment and leave them there, they're really going to suffer. So you want to make sure that that potting mix is wet, wet, wet. So let's do that. So I have my trusty bottom watering bowl. I'm just going to pop my plant in. It should take quite a lot of water because the potting mix is dry. It's a good chance to push down the soil a bit as well. I did forget to shake it, shake out the air bubbles, but watering it kind of does the same thing, so it'll settle the soil. So there's water coming out the bottom. And we're just going to leave her to soak for a little bit and then pop it in the decorative pot. While that's soaking, I'll do a little cleanup. I don't feel like cleaning up, so instead I will tell you my basic ficus care for the ficus lyrata. So I water mine every 10 to 14 days and they like to dry out in between watering. They do well in a fairly bright spot, so the one behind you is in a south facing window and I'm in Australia, so it gets the morning sunlight. I fertilize monthly in summer and spring and less in the cooler months. I try to keep the leaves clean by going in with neem oil monthly, or at least wiping them down. They can be prone to spider mites and thrips, so it's a good idea to mist your plants as well to help prevent pests like that. If you've got red spots on your leaves, this is called edema and it means you have likely overwatered your plant. They can be prone to root rot as well, which is why they need to dry out in between watering. If your foliage is falling off and it's brown and a bit soft, it is likely root rot, so watch out for that. Usually it is better to underwater your plants than overwater them, so err on the side of caution. When they are thirsty, the leaves will usually start to droop a little bit, so you can look out for that. Just letting the excess water drip off. Now I can pop her in her little planter. Very cute. So I'm going to put this in a sunny spot, not too far from where it was propagating, just so we don't shock it with putting it in a potting mix and then also changing the environment. But that's it. Let's fill out the top of my Epipremnum Aureum Neon, also known as the Neon Pothos. We are going to do that by adding in some cuttings which I've rooted in water to the top of the plant. So let's do it. Hello, I'm Jacinta. Welcome back to my channel, Past That Plant. I took this cutting back in August and it is now January. So this is what 6 months of growth looks like on the roots. I definitely could have planted this one months ago, pothos roots, very quickly. But as you all know, I love a water propagation and hydro plants. So I'm more than happy to let these root in water for months to years. But it is time today. I did toss up between potentially making another mixed planter like this gorgeous one I have here. It doesn't have a Neon Pothos in it, even though it may look like it. This is Philodendron Brazil. I have lots of other pothos cuttings which are ready to pot up, which is why I considered making another mixed planter, but the top of this one could look better. She's definitely long enough, but we want a bushy top as well as length. So I'm going to add it back in here, and then the next time I chop and prop, I may make another mixed planter then. going to use my trusty potting mat, which is especially important today because I'm going to be reusing the potting mix and putting the plant back in the same pot. So we're not going up a size, and I'm not repotting because there's anything wrong with the current pot. I mean, I don't think so. We may start to add in the new ones and see that she does need more space, but at this stage the plan is to make some more room and add in the new cuttings and then put the same potting mix back in. So this way I will capture it. I'm going to use some gloves. Let's see how she looks. It's not a super extensive root ball, so we definitely don't need to go up a pot size. It is interesting to see how thin these roots are compared to the roots of my water propagation, which are very thick and healthy. But there will definitely be no problem in potting this plant back in the same nursery pot. Before repotting this plant and adding in my cuttings, I'm going to add a soil and microbe booster to the potting mix. This really extends the life of it, so it won't need a repot again for a year or two. It is a good idea to wear gloves and other protective gear when using potting mix, fertilizer, anything like that. If I was repotting outside, I would probably use protective glasses and possibly a face mask as well, just to protect myself from breathing it in. But as I'm inside, there is no wind blowing it around. I'm adding a few mesh rounds to the base of my grower's pot. This will help stop the potting mix falling straight out the bottom. There's quite big holes in the base of growers' pots, so the mesh is a good hack. Now let's scoop the potting mix back into my grower's pot. It's 2/3 full. Let's add in my plant. Losing the gloves so I can do this better. Plenty of room in here. I already had 3 vines growing in here. Now we have 2 more, so there is 5. So this is going to be lovely and full. Just spread them out a little bit. As this is a hanging plant, they will all go in a similar direction. Okay, so now I'm happy with how it's sitting. I will add the remainder of the potting mix to the top, and then I can always add some more fresh potting mix if we need it. Make sure there's no leaves that are going to get covered. Okay. Again, putting my gloves back on. I'm going to add just a touch of fresh potting mix on the top. I think she needs a little more. Adding some indoor potting mix. I said this in my last video, but I really want to reiterate that potting mix is not the same as general garden soil. Garden soil is really made for the garden, so outdoors it is more compact. It's made of little dirt, not especially made potting mix, and it often has things in it that you don't necessarily want in your home. Whereas a general indoor potting mix has been specially formulated for houseplants. It has perlite and other ingredients in it, which means it won't go compact and suffocate your roots. It'll keep your houseplants happy if you use a good brand. If you don't have a good brand, you can always add something like a microbe booster, or just make sure you are fertilizing your plants more often. Now she's looking pretty good, already much fuller. Now she'll need a really good soak. So let's do that. Put her in a bowl of water. Then I'm going to top water as well with the water she was rooting in, as this has lots of good rooting hormones in it, and we really want to wet the top. So I've watered from the top and the bottom, and now I'll let it soak. Whenever you're transferring a water propagation to a potting mix, you want to make sure that your potting mix is very, very wet, especially the first week or so, because the plant has been growing in water and the roots are used to being very wet and hydrated, and they will not like being put into a dry potting mix. This is how you can have issues such as transplant shock. You let her soak for a while, and we'll put her back where she belongs. Been soaking for quite a while now. Just going to move it to this exact same bowl to drip dry further, because the pot she belongs in is a wicker one, so we don't want that one getting wet, and I don't want to get dripped on the lounge because this one sits above my lounge. I did give the foliage just a quick rinse down as well, because I'd gotten potting mix on it. So it's quite wet, but looking good. I think the Neon Pothos is so pretty, and it definitely doesn't get enough hype. Really love the way it goes from chartreuse all the way to neon, thus its name. Pothos are very easy to care for, so they are a great beginner plant. They're really versatile as well. You can let them hang, which is what I'm doing, or you can have them climb a pole, and then you'll have a very large foliage and may even get fenestration like you do with monsteras. If you've ever been anywhere tropical like Bali, you would probably have seen fenestrated pothos. Likely the golden pothos, not the neon. They're very easy to propagate as well, which also makes them a great beginner plant. They're so easy to propagate because they have nodes the whole way along, and I mean the whole way along. So if you push these into potting mix, it will root. That's another way that you can get a fuller plant faster. You can twist it around the top and push the nodes into the potting mix, similar to what I did with my string of hearts. Or you can take cuttings anywhere with a node and make sure this is submerged either in water or a potting mix, and it will turn into a root. So very easy. And you generally don't need to let them callus or anything either, depending on how thick the stem is. There you have it. Beautiful and full on the top now. And this will grow 2 full new vines. And then it'll probably be time to chop and prop again. And that is the repot done. Adding cuttings to your houseplants is such a great way to make them bushier faster. You can of course make a mixed planter if the plants have a similar care need. Or just like with the Neon Pothos, you can take lots of cuttings and plant them up together to make a really full, beautiful plant like I have with my Begonia Maculata. It is time to put this pothos back where it belongs. I am trying not to be verbose, but I will go through its care now as well. The Epipremnum aureum is such an easy plant to take care of. Mine hangs here in the corner and gets indirect sunlight. As always, you want a well-draining potting mix, and you can use an indoor potting mix or an aeroid mix. Make sure that your pot has drainage holes, of course. Fertilize this one every 4 to 6 weeks in the growing season, which is when it's warm, and less in the cooler seasons when your plant is going dormant. If your vines are going bald, it is a sign that you need to trim it back. Super easy to propagate. I water it weekly in summer and less in the cooler months. And lastly, this plant is toxic for both humans and pets, so keep it away from your four-legged friends. Now let's scoop the potting mix back in. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired.